A couple weeks back, there was a very interesting report that had come out that the Las Vegas Raiders rookie wide receiver Jack Bech was apparently having a really good rookie minicamp. Right, going up against the rookies, Jack Bech was apparently standing out. The guy was basically out there dominating. And if you guys don't know this, the Raiders started OTAs last week, and apparently Jack Bech is now dominating some of the veterans. And this is a very interesting report that is coming out here. Apparently, the Raiders rookie is already consistently open during practice. And I want to talk about what this means because, the Raiders really need some help on the offensive side, right? At least looking at last year's team. Coming into this season, it was very important that they get better. And they definitely added two guys that could definitely change things for the Raiders, right? You got Sanjit, obviously, should be one of the top 5 running backs in the NFL. And then we took a wide receiver in the second round, and now that wide receiver is also apparently looking really good. This report actually comes from Sean Reed, who's actually going to put it out there saying that Jack Bech was consistently open on Friday during OTAs. His best plays came towards the end of practice when he hauled in several deep balls during 11-on-11 drills that would have been touchdowns. We don't know whether he'll spend most of his time outside or in the slot, but he'll be a day one starter if he keeps up this pace. So apparently Jack Bech is out there having his way with some of the different guys. Now we don't know if he's lined up against the 1s, the 2s, the 3s. We can make the assumption that he'll probably be playing against some of the backups, right? Even, really thinking about it, if the Raiders aren't going to put their number 1 defense going up against the number 1 offensive unit, especially this early on in the process, there's no shoulder pads. At the same time, you want your offense to kind of learn and develop, not just get beat up on, right? Especially at this point. But, Jack Bech is still out there and he's still flashing and he's still being noticed by some of the reporters at the Raiders camp. I haven't personally heard anything about Jack Bech, but the fact that Sean Reed, a guy that's at the Raiders practice, is actually noticing that Jack Bech is out there doing his thing really does put into perspective what the Raiders can actually have on the offensive side this season. Last season, when you just look at that team as a whole, especially on the offensive side, we had so many struggles. Everybody knows about the quarterbacks that kind of came in and struggled. We had 3 different quarterbacks that kind of played for us last year. All 3 of those guys kind of struggled, but there was so much more than just the quarterbacks that were struggling for the Raiders, right? I would make the argument the wide receivers weren't getting open downfield. The running backs, it'd be 1st and 10. They'd get a carry and it's 2nd and 11 now, or 2nd and 9, like best case scenario. You get another run. Now it's 3rd and 7. And, that alone is going to impact the quarterback. But my point in saying that is the running back room last season was really poor. The offensive line was inexperienced and really not that good either. They had to keep in multiple tight ends, multiple running backs to help chip because the offensive linemen essentially needed that help, right? When you have a rookie and DJ Glaze starting at right tackle, when you have a rookie who practiced at left guard but has to now take over at center, that's going to impact the offensive line. Even more than that, last year, Cody Whitehair played a lot for the Raiders. Jordan Meredith played a lot for the Raiders. The Raiders brought those guys in and there was a chance they would play, but that wasn't necessarily the plan going into last season, right? So I think the Raiders offensive line was bad last year, but coming into this year, things have completely flipped for the Raiders, right? The outlook of the Raiders this year is so much better, right? Obviously you upgrade with Geno Smith and that alone is going to allow you to be a good offense, but then the offensive line is going to be a lot better. Right? Jackson Powers-Johnson this year is going into year 2. DJ Glaze is going into year 2. That doesn't include some of the rookies that you brought in. And usually you don't want to depend on rookies. But some positions you can depend on rookies, right? If you bring in a good rookie guard, at the guard position, rookies will right away, day one, be good football players, right? And to me, when I look at the Raiders' offensive line, it's so much more improved from last year to this year. The weapons, right? Hearing that Jack Bech is out there kind of doing his thing, there's a real chance Jack Bech is our best wide receiver by week 8, right? There's a real chance that could end up happening. And no hate on Jacoby Myers, but Jacoby Myers, we know what he is right now as a wide receiver. His ceiling's kind of been reached, right? He'll be a very consistent player. He'll be a very good wide receiver. But Jack Bech has the potential to be a true number 1 wide receiver, a true difference maker, a guy that just beats anyone out there, right? And based off the reports that this guy's actually having success, to me, it fires me up because, this offense can be very explosive. And again, that doesn't include Brock Bowers. That doesn't include Ashton Genty, right? Those 2 guys are going to be top 5 guys at their positions for the next, 10 years, hopefully. And the fact that the Raiders are adding weapons, they're getting better. The offense can actually, be really, really good. And we could actually be, a top 10 offense, right? We could be scoring 28 points, 31 points, 35, 40 points potentially in multiple games this season, which is not something I had any faith in last year, especially given the offensive coordinator last year, right? Luke Getzey, terrible, terrible coach. But the Raiders are in a really, really good spot as we kind of go forward. And we'll see what ends up happening. I do, once again, have faith that Jack Bech will be a good wide receiver, especially based on some of these reports. If the Raiders had OTAs and, Jack Bech was doing nothing in OTAs and we heard that, hey, he hasn't really done much, and then that's kind of a concern, and you would say, okay, maybe he just needs to develop a little bit. Dante Thornton, haven't heard much about him, right, coming out. I know he did have one touchdown grab on day one. Geno Smith hit him for a touchdown. But he's not shining and he's not standing out the way Jack Bech is. And, Sean Reed's not the only guy that has said this. There are other Raiders reporters that, write articles and do that type of stuff that have also kind of put the same thing out there that Jack Bech has been shining. To me, very, very, very solid reports. Exactly what you want to hear at this point. We'll see if he can continue this as we go forward. Training camp isn't that far away, right? It's 2 months away. There was a time when the draft was 2 months away. Now we're a month past the draft, right? So we'll see what ends up happening. There are two other reports that I want to get into. I think the more important one is going to be the fact that the Raiders have officially locked in the NFL's best punter, AJ Cole. Now, before we go forward, I wanted to take a quick second to share an update with you guys regarding the 2025 fantasy football. A lot of you guys have been asking, are you doing a league once again this season? We will be doing a best ball league. Last year, for the first time, I started doing best ball. I think it is so much better than the traditional fantasy football. If you guys are interested in joining my league, it'll be a 12-man league. I'll put some instructions down in the comments below. You guys can click those links, sign up. It'll be a $10 entry. Join my league, man. Best ball. Really, really, really fun experience, in my opinion. Let's get right back into the content. I think the more important one is going to be the fact that the Raiders have officially locked in the NFL's best punter, AJ Cole. Jordan Schultz was the first one that put it out there. He said that, according to his sources, the Raiders and two-time first-team All-Pro punter AJ Cole have agreed to a 4-year, $15.8 million extension with $11 million guaranteed. This essentially makes him the highest-paid punter in the NFL. Let's talk about what this means for the Raiders, right? So some people, and I did see this posted on social media, I could not disagree with this more, but some Raider fans were like, that's a terrible contract. You are paying AJ Cole basically $4 million per season. Now, I want you guys to think about this, right? Adam Butler did not make $4 million in any of his NFL seasons up until just literally a month ago when he signed his new extension, right? When Adam Butler just signed his new extension, it jumped him up to like $6-7 million a year. Prior to that, he never made $4 million in any of his seasons, right? And some people are saying, hey, how are you paying a punter $4 million? Here's the thing, man, and I truly, truly do believe this. A punter can impact the game more than most players. Most one player on the defensive side, most one player on the offensive side. A punter can impact the game more than those guys. And I know people don't really think about it in that instance. But when the Philadelphia Eagles and Kansas City Chiefs played in the Super Bowl, one of the big differences in that game was the fact that the Eagles punter, when he punted the ball, got the Eagles backed up in like the 15, 20 yard line multiple times. Right in that first half specifically, if you guys remember, going back to that Super Bowl game, the Eagles punter did a great job punting the football, where the Chiefs, in order for them to score points, literally had to drive multiple yards to be able to score a touchdown. Right? Even just getting in a field goal range, just like 50, 60 yards out. A punter can impact the game more than people realize, especially a good punter. Right, a good punter, you back a team up, you put them at the 15-yard line, and now they got to go 85 yards to score. That's a lot more difficult than, hey, you kick the ball out of the end zone, and now you're at the 35-yard line. Right, it's a big difference in that. And to me, that's what AJ Cole brings to the Raiders. And when I say he can impact the game more than any given, one player on offense, one player on defense, obviously there's, guys like Maxx Crosby, there's guys like Geno Smith and Patrick Mahomes that will obviously impact the game more than AJ Cole. But to me, I don't think we should overlook how valuable a punter is. And yes, it's almost $4 million per year, but that's also giving you the best punter in the NFL. This is a guy that statistically is always getting teams backed up inside the 20. This is one of the most accurate punters in terms of ball placement, being able to get the ball into a certain spot. And again, never overlook how much field position impacts a team. And I know, most of the time people, you might not think about it in this instance. Most of the time you might think, hey, the other team has the ball, and if they score a touchdown, it's because you just have a bad defense, right? Or, hey, a team gets 3 points, it's because you have a bad defense. But one of the big issues that happened with the Raiders last year, and it didn't show up as much because we did have a great punter. But last year, like, how many times did the Raiders start at the 25 or 30-yard line? They go 3 and out, they punt the football, and if it's a bad punt, from the 30, 35, if it's a bad punt, the other team has the ball at the 40-yard line. If it's a great punt, the other team has the ball at the 17-yard line. That's a huge difference, right? And again, I know we haven't seen it as much because we haven't been in a position where both the offense and defense have been really, really, really good in both seasons. This season might be that season where our offense is really good and the punters flipping games for the Raiders. Again, go back to the Super Bowl and watch how the Eagles punter essentially flipped the game for the Eagles against the Chiefs. The Chiefs had multiple long drives. They picked up 1 or 2 first downs, and then they had to punt the football because the Eagles get off the field on that third first down possession within that drive, right? So to me, I think this is a solid contract for the Raiders. Historically speaking, the Raiders have had such great punters over the course of history. Some people think A.J. Cole can be the greatest punter in Raiders history. I think that's hard to say because, I was old enough to watch Shane Leckler. He was such a great punter. And then even going beyond that, you had Ray Guy, who was another really, really, really good punter. Some people say he's the greatest punter in NFL history. A.J. Cole is going to be a great punter, right? And he's already a great punter, but historically speaking, he'll probably be a great punter. We'll see where he kind of ends his NFL career as we kind of go forward. Personally, think he's a phenomenal punter. Love it. I think it's well worth it, especially with the salary cap kind of going up. And again, we'll start to see those feelings a little bit more this season when he's getting a team backed up, and then our defense is able to get a three and out, right? Our defense is able to get a 3 and out, and now we're at the 50-yard line because of the punt, and then the defense getting that 3 and out, right? So again, we'll see it kind of happen as we go forward. I think it's a good contract. We got one other report that's coming out. ESPN did this article where they did a bunch of different predictions. They did a bunch of different things that they kind of talked about. And they actually said one of the most improved teams this season was the Las Vegas Raiders. And I want to talk about this because usually the Raiders are never getting any sort of love, but they are literally the most improved team in the NFL. This article is coming out by Benjamin Solak, and he's basically putting it out there saying that the Raiders are one of the most improved teams, and he thinks they can be right at about 500. And I agree with what he's saying, right? He's kind of saying, you go from Geno Smith, you go up to Gardner Minshew to Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, you go up to Geno Smith, right? You're getting a lot better. Brock Bowers going into year 2, you add Ashton Genty. Obviously, I don't think Solak here probably follows the Raiders as closely as we do. But we see guys like Jack Bech getting a lot of hype kind of coming out as well. Michael Mayer, I know, hasn't really done a whole lot, but remember, he was regarded as one of the best tight ends coming out when he came out, right? That doesn't include some of the other guys we have as well, right? Like Sincere McCormick could be a really good running back, right? Or a really good number 2, number 3 option at the running back position. That doesn't include Trey Tucker, who has shown explosive ability. The Raiders, I think, are one of the most improved teams. And for ESPN to actually give credit to the Raiders, to me, is something that you got to give credit to a guy like John Spytek for. Because it's not just one of those paper things. The Raiders are actually legitimately getting better, right? You are getting better on the offensive line. You are adding more talent among the wide receivers, the running backs, the tight ends, right? The Raiders have gotten so much better than where we were just 2 years ago. And I think the way the Raiders are building right now, it's actually being built for long-term success, right? The way the Raiders kind of went all in when Josh McDaniels, Dave Ziegler first kind of got here, that was not building for long-term success, right? Giving Chandler Jones the money that the Raiders gave him, right? Dave Ziegler, one of the first contracts he did was he brought in Chandler Jones. Another thing they did was they traded for Devontae Adams. Those contracts, right? Those trades and trading away picks and bringing these big-name guys in, that's not long-term success, right? Truth be told, that's you're going all in for the next 2 to 3 years. And the Raiders did do that, right? And I think Josh McDaniels, Dave Ziegler did have that plan of, hey, this team has guys like Malcolm Koonce and Trayvon Merrick and Robert Spillane they have some of these different guys under contract, or, you know, we brought in some of these guys as well. And these guys are eventually going to become free agents where they're going to cash out. Right? Nate Hobbs got like 12, 13 million, which makes him one of the higher paid slot corners. Trayvon Merrick becomes a top 5 to 7 paid safety. Koonce at some point will become one of the highest paid defensive linemen. Maybe it was a smart decision to kind of go all in, but generally speaking, it never really works out, right? Look at the Saints, kind of where they're at. Look at the Cowboys, where they're at. The best way to build is long term. And for ESPN to say the Raiders are one of the most improved teams, that's one thing. But then you got to take a step back and realize that John Spytek, long term, has put this team on a really, really, really good path. And you can even give some credit to Tom Telesco from last year, right? Cannot overlook the fact that he got us arguably the best tight end, arguably the best center in the NFL. And we don't really know what DJ Glaze can develop into. There's still a chance he could be the starting franchise tackle for the Raiders, which would bring 3 guys from one draft class that Tom Telesco potentially got for the Raiders for the long term, right? Now, I do think 2 of those 3 guys are already basically guaranteed superstar players. So you got to give him some credit, but John Spytek has taken that and continued to add to that, right? You're adding Asher Genty, who should be really, really good. Jack Bech looks really, really good as well, at least according to some of the reports. Darian Porter is taking first-team snaps, right, which is a report that came out of the Raiders OTAs. This guy's taking first-team snaps. Now, maybe he won't start for the Raiders, but the fact that the Raiders are actually giving this guy little snaps means they actually believe this guy is more than just some of the, the scouting hype, right? The 4.3 speed, the 6'3.5" frame, the athleticism. Like, maybe the Raiders actually think this guy could be really, really good pretty quickly, right? And to me, those are the things you wanna kind of see, and you got to give credit to the general manager for putting the Raiders on this path. You know, the Geno Smith trade is so much different than like the Devontae Adams trade, for example. For Devontae Adams, you give him first and a second round pick. For Geno Smith, it's a 3rd round pick, right? And then not only do you give up a 3rd round pick, but then you're not making this guy the highest paid quarterback, right? Geno's getting like $37.5 million when you average it out over the years. That's a really, really good contract for the Raiders, right? The benefits to Las Vegas Raiders. John Spytek's done a really, really good job. And I think for ESPN to give the Raiders the credit that they deserve, does at least fire me up, because it kind of tells me that, the national media is starting to realize it as well. It's not just us, right, buying that hype and just thinking they're going to be a good team. Like, people are actually predicting that they'll be a good football team. And again, does not surprise me at all. We're definitely on the right path, and we'll see what ends up happening as you kind of go forward. Being a great paper team is one thing. You got to go out there and put it on tape. You got to go out there and put it on the field. So we'll see if the Raiders can actually do it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.